Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited about today's conversation. I have my good friends Charles and Farooq here with me, and we're going to talk about all things Web3. Farooq and Charles are founder of Rain, a corporate card for teams building the Web3 space. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to them. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Farooq. I'm one of the co-founders of Rain. Grew up in Washington, D.C., and lived there until going to college. I went to college at the University of Texas in Austin, and then worked in management consulting after college for several years, and then moved into, went to grad school in the UK. So I was in London and worked in banking there. And then after that, just did lots of other stuff. Like was in private equity, was back to banking, and then long story that's led me down to where I am today, which is building Rain with Charles.
Yeah, I'm Charles. I'm the other co-founder of Rain. Grew up in New York City, was always interested in tech and startups since like a young age. I taught myself how to program in middle school, started my first tech startup in high school, building a college admissions statistic website, since that was the problem that me and my friends had when we were 16, 17. Studied computer science at Stanford, was a PM at Microsoft, and then left Microsoft to start my own startup again, building an applicant tracking system for marketplaces that have tons of contractors like ride-sharing companies, food delivery companies, helping them automate and customize that entire process at scale and at the speed that they need. Bootstrapped that business with my co-founder, and then we got acquired by Intuit, joined Intuit's self-employed team, building out our product internally there and rebranding it and launching it as Intuit Workforce. And then I worked on QuickBooks Self-Employed as a tech lead and principal engineer. Left in 2019 to travel the world for a bit, moved back to New York right before COVID hit. Spent some time volunteering, and then met Farooq the beginning of 2021, and we started working on a side project together called signandwire.com, which was a problem that resonated with us both as founders and as angel investors. We just thought it should be easier to invest in startups and also to raise funding. So we started working that on the side, and our experience building that is kind of what led us to Rain.
Great. So typically, I think we'll get into, all about Rain. But typically what I like to do is like get to know people a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. So you have, I think first-gen immigrant, if I'm not mistaken. How, what was it like? And then did that have any impact into the path you've chosen?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Pakistan. I moved here with my parents when I was 5. And I've always been interested in building things and exploring stuff and learning things. And so I started my first business when I was 14. I started my first business when I was in elementary school. I used to go to the car show, and I would get all the car magazines and I'd sell them to kids in school for like $1 or $2 a pop. And then I started my first actual business. And when I was 14, I built a website online for people, and then I ended up building websites for various government contracts. And that was my first foray into being kind of a programmer kind of person as well as an entrepreneur. And then that led me down the line of, I started a company called ridearound.com, which was an online car auction website. That was when I was 15 or 16. It was way too early. Also, nobody took people that young seriously at the time. I think that now, if you're 15 or 16, you can probably start a company and have people take you seriously. But back then, it was very difficult to do anything. Like even opening a bank account was kind of annoying and hard. So I've always been interested in this space for a long time, and definitely has had something to do with me doing what I'm doing now. I went away from entrepreneurship for a while. Was in jobs doing a lot of interesting things. Just never went away. And so I always wanted to start something on my own at some point. How
about you, Charles? I believe you also grew up in New York, correct?
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, in South Williamsburg. I grew up in the same neighborhood that my mom grew up in. It was the neighborhood that my grandparents came to when they first came from Puerto Rico. And my dad grew up in the Dominican Republic, came here when he was like 18. And I went to high school at Brooklyn Tech. So it's like this magnet high school in Brooklyn where even before that, I was really into video games. That's kind of my first entryway into technology, was just playing video games and wanting to create my own video games. So when I was young, I was always figuring out how to do that. Got really into the gaming industry, and wanted to go to Brooklyn Tech because they had a computer science major, so I could actually like learn how to be a better programmer when I was in high school. And then luckily took the test, got in, studied computer science when I was there, and was surrounded with a lot of awesome people. Some of my like best friends to this day, people that I still talk to a bunch and still work on stuff with and talk to about different ideas. And then, worked on a lot of projects while in high school, worked on my first startup there. Didn't really think of going out west for college. I never even been to California before I applied to Stanford. I kind of applied on a whim, just like, oh, I should do the application. It was a pretty long application, so I almost didn't do it a few times. But it was the farthest college I applied to, and when I got in, it's the only time I really considered it seriously, and it seemed like the perfect place for me, given that I love technology, loved building things, building companies, and then when I got there, I had an amazing time.
So Charles, tell us why you decided to pursue entrepreneurship. Where did that interest come from? Was that from being in the Stanford entrepreneurial environment when everyone's talking about tech, or was there interest in entrepreneurship even before that?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to like build. I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know the word entrepreneurship until high school. Like in high school, I was part of, helped found this club called the Young Entrepreneurs Association, which was like an entrepreneurship club that we just created with our friends. But before that, I just thought like, oh, I want to be like an inventor, or because I thought that's what it basically is, an entrepreneur, like creating new things, building new products. Um, I loved all those like as seen on TV commercials where like all these innovative products were introduced. So I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know the word entrepreneur or entrepreneurship until high school. And then high school is really where I feel like I got more exposure. And then going to Stanford, you just get even more exposure to that, and surrounded with even more entrepreneurs and more people who've started companies or want to start companies. But yeah, definitely had that urge to do that way before.
It's great. It's just interesting, journey that led you to where you are. So a lot of my audience is like normies, right? People that don't know Web3, crypto. So tell us maybe a little bit about Rain, what it's about. To start from the basic, and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, the Rain is a corporate credit card product, right? So we are a tool that allows companies that operate in Web3 to spend what is essentially their native currency, which is digital asset tokens or cryptocurrencies, for real world things. So they can use their cryptocurrency to buy airplane tickets or laptops for their employees, or pay for services like GitHub or Gmail or AWS. And we allow them to interface with the existing kind of financial infrastructure without having to worry about how do they get their tokens into actual spendable cash.
So why Rain? Why crypto, right? Like what kind of led you to this, where you are?
Yeah, so when we started building, so I met Charles, we started building a tool called signandwire.com. And Sign and Wire was a fundraising tool for companies to be able to raise money from investors. And we built that because, one of the things we both bonded over was realizing that the amount of times you have to sign a document and send money is like, fairly often. But they're two separate workflows. It's like, imagine if you wanted to buy a pair of sneakers, you would go buy a pair of sneakers and they would give you a piece of paper that then you had to like mail in to send them your money. That's essentially the experience with signatures and like investment documents, et cetera. And so we built a product called Sign and Wire, which was a tool to automate a lot of that workflow. And as part of that, we had crypto founders reach out and they were asking us, hey, is there a solution for raising money with cryptocurrencies. Like we want to raise money from angel investors, and we want to be able to get that money into our wallet. But how do we do that? There's no native tool, and so they asked us to support that use case. We ended up building that early last year, or actually kind of mid last year, and through that we got connected to a lot more crypto founders, and we started, fielding questions from folks that had raised a lot of money, like tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions in some cases, and they were asking us things like, well, we have all these tokens, but how do we pay for a conference room at like a hotel? Or how do we buy a laptop? Or, we have to use our own credit cards, personal credit cards, to pay our bills. And then they try to get reimbursed after the fact. And so we started thinking through this and realizing that it's a pretty big problem. And when we started testing, hey, if we were to solve this for you, what do you think? How would you feel about that? We started realizing that these people were, this was a very top of mind problem for them, and they wanted it solved immediately. And so that's how we ended up realizing that there was an opportunity here. And then at that point, it just felt irresponsible not to build a company to solve it, because we knew that there was a problem. We knew the people who had it. We even knew the solution of how we could solve it. And we didn't set out to build it, but we ended up having to build it anyways.
Yeah, so crypto as a whole, right, is I guess somewhat polarizing. There are a lot of people in traditional finance who seems to think it's a scam. And there are people that are in crypto Web3, they're all in, right? They think it's going to solve the world's problem. And people like me, kind of in the middle, I think it's just a technology and it's evolving, right? So it'll continue to evolve. That's probably why a lot of the VC money is going in there, because it's new and they're investing more for the potential. I guess, why crypto, right? As opposed to just going the traditional route, like what made you to have a crypto focused solution?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm fascinated with, right? Like I've always been an early adopter. I was very early on the internet as like a kid. I was early in, lots of other things like that people started exploring around, right? And like I was early in scooters and all this other stuff. So I've always been fascinated by technological improvements and enhancements and what that unlocks for the opportunities for everyone else down the line. And one of the things that's interesting about this, right, is that the products on day one end up looking very different from the products that come out of the successful implementation of an industry. So if you look at the traditional internet, right, like today, most of it was started by like bulletin boards, right? Like people would just go post stuff on bulletin boards. Like there's some businesses still, which, effectively are like a bulletin board, but the vast majority of the internet is completely different, right? And so like the content delivery, the content, the use cases, all that stuff has changed, but the underlying basic primitives are more or less the same, right? And similarly, like with Web3 and with crypto, I saw this as a space where there's an opportunity to take advantage of some of the interesting use cases and new things that are enabled by cryptocurrencies, right? Like the whole idea of a smart contract, being able to have something where you can program where your money is supposed to go, is pretty interesting, right? Like when I pay my mortgage or when I pay my rent, like I pay my rent to my landlord, landlord has to go pay their mortgage. The mortgage person has to go pay the person that holds the mortgage paperwork, and then that person has to pay someone else. And at some point, like some institution eventually gets paid at the end, but there's a whole flow. And right now, all of that is manual, right? With a lot of what the technological improvements of what Web3 is enabling, I can see a world in which that payment can be automated to actually, I can send it and it automatically will go to whoever needs to get it at whatever time they're supposed to get it, right? And so that eliminates the need to have like manual reconciliation. It makes everything a lot faster, makes everything a lot more transparent and easier to optimize for. And then the resultant impact of that is that it makes it a lot cheaper to actually implement, right? So we can see like a world not too far away where if we ended up with smart contracts and like regular dollars, we could, reduce the cost of like a mortgage for a consumer, reduce the cost of like interest on credit cards and things like that, because a lot of what you're paying for is like the manual work that people are doing. And if you can eliminate that and make it more automatic, that will drive a lower cost, right? And to the end user. So I think that's like really interesting to me, and
Yeah.
I'm super interested in exploring how do we get there from here.
And I would add, I think Farooq before was saying how people confuse everything for the thing. So there's a lot of different narratives, but to me, and I think with Rain, one of the most exciting narratives of Web3 is the just composability of smart contracts and also the permissionlessness of smart contracts. So we never had to, building Rain, we never had to talk to anyone to interact with their smart contract to send money from one wallet to another, that we could just look at the code in the smart contract and build it out. Versus when we were building Sign and Wire, we had to get sign off from our third parties to like increase the limits. We had to get into these contract negotiations, all of these things that slow down innovation and make it harder for people to build new experiences and improve the whole thing. So that's like what personally I'm like most excited about Web3, and I feel like is one of the biggest game changers, is the fact that innovation is actually growing exponentially in Web3 because of that composability and permissionlessness of it. People can build on top of each other, and every week someone's riffing on someone else's idea or smart contract to provide you a new experience that you didn't have the week before.
So, a lot of people don't realize Web3 as a whole is pretty vast, right? There's a lot of different verticals within it. There's NFTs, there's DAOs, there's cryptocurrency, DeFi, right? I guess, maybe it would be interesting to do like a quick take on all of those different verticals. Like, what's your kind of take on it? So the criterias are like whether they're early, underrated, or overrated. So like we'll go one by one. So NFT, right? This like kind of blew up during the pandemic. What's your feeling on NFT?
Look, I think NFTs are, it's definitely interesting. There's a lot of stuff that's happening with NFTs and lots of things that are emerging in terms of uses of NFTs. I think like NFTs in one way are overrated, but also are underrated, right? I think it's like very early on lots of these things, right? So I think speculation on NFTs might be overrated. I think that the overall utility of what an NFT can do is definitely underrated.
I think it's very early. I think it's overrated in some respects. Like it went too far ahead in certain things. And then I think it's underrated in certain other areas. Like there's, I think utility NFTs are still really early. Like we're seeing new use cases of how people are doing it. I think maybe NFTs as art kind of went a little bit too fast. I think we'll get there and like grow into what it was. But I think there's just so many other use cases for NFTs that people are underrating right now and don't fully understand. They just see this JPEG of a monkey was sold for $10 million. And
Yeah, 100% agree. I think there's a lot of potential for companies that wants to do like loyalty programs and stuff like that. Before you had to have your own system database, but with the NFT infrastructure, you could essentially get going in a day or two, right? So there's definitely a lot of benefit to that. DeFi, what's your feeling on DeFi?
DeFi is definitely, I think it's underrated. I think that there's elements of it which have been in the public eye recently that have given it kind of a bad rap. But if you look at all of those things, they're not really DeFi. They're mostly just like centralized protocols that are run by private companies that then farm that money out into like privatized lending, which is not really DeFi at all. But I think overall DeFi is underrated for sure.
yeah, I would agree. It's all three again. And something that I've been thinking of a lot recently is how the permissionlessness aspect that we've been talking about is contributing to this all threeness, where it's both overrated and underrated. And if you look at traditional startups and startup equity, you have to be an accredited investor to invest in a startup. Rounds are competitive, so you're not taking everyone's money that you can, because there's only so much dilution a founder is willing to give up for a certain round. There's not liquidity if you do get startup equity, so you can't just trade the share or the safe that you just invested and got to some other investor for a higher multiple right away. But when you look at what happened in DeFi, you have all of these tokens being launched for like essentially pre-product market fit startups that had instant liquidity, had millions of retail investors being able to buy them without having to prove accreditation or anything like that. So all of the future growth and future potential of these protocols basically was pulled way forward because people saw the future or saw hype, and their market caps really surpass their current actual value. So that in that regards, a lot of these DeFi protocols that some are doing really innovative things, some were just straight up clones or forks of others, had multi-billion-dollar market caps that were for sure overrated. But I think DeFi as a concept and as a whole, and all the new applications we're going to see it in, is still underrated.
Cryptocurrency, right? So this is L1, L2 currency like Solana, Bitcoin, Ether, and whole host of other coins. What's your overall feeling on cryptocurrency? Like, do you see that space kind of consolidating? Because right now there's like literally hundreds, maybe if not thousands of different coins and cryptocurrency out there.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely going to be consolidation, right? Like the market cap and utility of various different things is going to be driven by adoption, like whoever uses it and what the volumes are and what people build on top of these things, right? I think the successful chains and the teams that are building those, the ecosystem foundations of these organizations that are building these things, they understand that. So if people start building utility and use cases that are interesting, like they're going to attract consumers, and consumers will use those services or utilize those protocols or whatever it is, and that's going to drive the long-term success of what happens next. But I think that it's weird in the sense that many L1 chains are overrated. I think same with like many L2 chains, but I think that there's a handful that are still underrated. That still, there's a lot of green space ahead. I think that we don't really know all of the things that need to become possible for a meaningful user experience, right? And so I think that all of it is very necessary, but at the same time, I don't think that everybody is going to be around forever.
So there's like recent changes with Ether. Like, what's your take on that overall? Do you think that's something positive for the ecosystem, the coin? A lot of people are saying that'll potentially kind of help it get to the next stage. Like, just what's your overall feeling on the recent changes?
Look, I think that there's different motivations for different people, right? So proof of stake is definitely something that is going to drive some cost improvements, right? Ethereum has been maligned as very expensive for the average user, and proof of stake will definitely go somewhere in terms of addressing that. I think that overall, proof of work and proof of stake are two very different things, obviously. Proof of work is really more of an intrinsic value kind of argument. And proof of stake is more of a operational network, right? So you get paid for throughput, you get paid for consensus, you get paid for the processing power that you drive, right? And proof of work is like you get paid for the electricity units that are being consumed in order to process those transactions, meaning sort of a pretty straightforward way. And so those are very just different approaches, right? It's hard to know what the long-term impact is going to be. I think that obviously transaction volumes on Ethereum may go up because the cost of doing them will go down. Overall, it's still so early to say. It's too early to say, does this mean that Ethereum prices will go up? Ethereum prices will go down, whatever was going to happen. We still don't know, right? A lot of this is still up in the air. A lot of it is driven by user demand, user, experience, the cost of utilizing the service, et cetera. So it's hard to know for sure.
And the last one in the vertical, DAOs. What's your feeling on DAOs? So early, underrated, overrated?
Yeah, I think it's still very early. There's so many use cases and organizational structures that we're still really early into exploring. I think a lot of the current DAOs either not going to work or going to have to shift radically how they're doing things because they're experiments in the end of the day, really early stage experiments in how to organize people in a decentralized way behind smart contracts and cryptocurrencies. And these are new tools that we've never had before in organizing people. So that's going to take some time to get right. I'm actually sitting right now inside of Empire DAO, which is a DAO that is, or a co-working space that's trying to become a DAO and trying to be decentralized and community driven. And it's still very much a work in progress. Like we're all the members, all the people here are contributing and we're learning every day and it's improving every day. And it's still not, where everyone wants it to be, but I think that's where we are with DAOs. It's the tools aren't there. What we're doing at Rain, I think, is helping DAOs be more scalable, manage their finances better, and grow in a decentralized way. But there's a lack of tooling. That touch tooling still needs to be built out. So many different organizational structures that still need to be experimented with. We're still at the phase where a lot of people are reinventing the wheel and trying ideas that have been tried before in different names. So yeah, I think we're still really early and it's not underrated or overrated yet, but I think there's huge potential in the whole idea of a DAO. We just have to figure out how to make it work.
I think it's super early on DAOs. I think the DAOs, there's a lot of really interesting things happening. I think this whole idea of a global remote organization, which is made up of individual contributors who have the ability to marshal resources and access opportunity that they wouldn't be able to do, is super interesting. I think that we've seen with the rise of like the gig economy with companies like Uber and DoorDash and Grubhub and all these other companies, the power, or like even Upwork or Fiverr, the power of freelancers, or like the power of a platform to empower freelancers. The challenge with those companies really has been that the vast majority of the benefits, the economic advantage, goes to the company that puts together the platform. Whereas with like a DAO organization, you have the structure where potentially down the line, we can see cooperatives of freelancers or developers, whatever it is, operating at a very high level, similar to how they typically operate on like Fiverr or Upwork.com, whatever it is, and retaining the vast majority of the economic benefit directly, right? So that's really interesting and super compelling about what's possible with DAOs. I think that the right way to run a DAO, the right way to vote, the right way to govern, the right token incentivization, the right model is very much like yet to be determined. It's just so early. There's lots of different people trying lots of different things. I think that ultimately over the next several years, we're going to see emerging use cases that have been successful, and that's going to drive the next generation of DAOs. I think that in order to get there, we're going to have to see many of these organizations fail, and we'll definitely see many of these organizations succeed, right? And that's how you have to separate the signal from the noise.
So this has been awesome. I always like to kind of close off with one final question. So, for the folks that are kind of watching, what advice would you have if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about crypto, or even like pursue entrepreneurship? What advice would you have for them?
My advice is to just go and do it. You don't really need permission. This is a permissionless world now. Go if you're interested in crypto. Don't read articles. Go and set up a MetaMask. Buy some tokens, buy some ETH. Go mint an NFT. Participate in a DAO. Join some Discords. Get in some Telegram groups. Just be active in the space. And if you want to build something in Web3, go and build it. Learn about the problems that are here. That problems that you might experience yourself trying to set up your wallet or interact with different contracts. Or problems that you might encounter by talking to people in the space. So if you're interested, just go do it, build it. Like you don't need permission from anyone. You don't need to raise money first or have a business plan first. Just go and build something.
I think the best way to do anything is to just try, like just start building things. I mean, we wouldn't even be here if we hadn't just started building something. You have to give yourself the opportunity to have good things happen to you. And if you're not doing anything, the chances of something good happening to you are very low. But if you're out there experimenting or learning or doing or contributing or reading or talking, you're going to find that more often than not, like the opportunities will be there for you to take advantage of. And especially now with like a global community, global workforce, it's easier than ever, right? Like you can join a Discord of a project that you're interested in, you can contribute, and nobody there knows where you are. They don't know how old you are. They don't care, right? As long as you have something meaningful to say or something interesting to add, I think people are open to listening. And I think that that's the beauty of where we are today in the world. And I think that that has increased the opportunity for good things to happen to a lot more people in terms of what they want to learn more about or what they want to experience more about or what they want to work on.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining me for the conversation. Really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you guys both in New York soon.
Yeah. Thank you.